I was coming down here today and I thought to myself, what does adversity actually mean? Did you know the cow and the buffalo can sense a storm? When there's a storm, the buffalo runs towards the storm and through the storm and gets out of the storm quite quickly. The cow runs away from the storm and stays in the storm a lot longer. In my time in adversity, I've been both a cow and a buffalo. So I'm going to use the next 13 minutes to tell you my story of the good, the bad, and the ugly. But first of all, I'll start my entrepreneurship story. That's meant to change the slide. There we are. So there's a commonly held belief that endurance sports are limited to the things you see during the Olympics. So if you ask yourself, what's the toughest endurance sport you know? Some people will say the marathon, some people say boxing, swimming, the triathlon. Well, you know something? Marathons test your physical endurance, and they do test it to the limit. But there's another sport that tests not just your physical endurance, your mental endurance, your mental state, your health, but most importantly, it tests your financial endurance. And that's entrepreneurship. And there's this commonly held belief that entrepreneurs are born, not made. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's not some lucky, God-given talent. It's a talent, or it's a facility you actually work for. You strive for it. You have the courage to pursue it. You have the endurance and the tenacity to go through it. And only then can you call yourself an entrepreneur. And hopefully, you become successful. But entrepreneurship is a journey. It's not necessarily a destination. You're going to go through it over and over and over again. So I'm going to tell my story. As I said, there have been great moments and there have been bad moments. But every single moment is an experience. And I'm going to tell it from the angle of three things. There we are. There are three things in the world I love. Well, there are many things I love, but there are three I want to focus on, right? And they sort of tie into my entrepreneurship story. So, as you can see, there's a picture there of me when I was born, many, many years ago. I wouldn't bore you with the numbers. But I got married 31 years ago on the 25th of November, 1993. My wife would be impressed, I remember that. I have two children. One was born in 1996 and the other was born in 1998. The reason I'm giving you these dates is because, as I said, I tell my life from three perspectives, the things that I love. The first thing, well, not in any particular order, so I don't get held up. So my family, our company Landmark, and yes, you guessed it, the Arsenal. There we are. So, in 1996, which happened to the year my daughter was born, my first child was born, was also the year that my team witnessed its first transformational manager. And as a matter of fact, I can think the only transformational manager in the Premiership until that bugger manages Man City came along, right? But it was a great year for us. For a simple reason, it was one of those memorable years. Arsene Wenger came to Arsenal. My first child was born. And I was just beginning to round up my entrepreneurship journey in the company I worked with, which was Regis. It goes backwards to go forward. In 1998, my son was born. But he was also born the same day that Arsenal won the double. The FA Cup and the Champions League. No guessing where I was. But all I can say, and please forgive me. All I can say is 1998 was a memorable year. The third part of 1998 that made it incredibly memorable was the year I started Landmark. So you're wondering, where's all the pain? What's the bad and the ugly? I've just been talking about the good. Well, here's some more good. So in 1998, Landmark started. It started with these three lovely ladies and myself. And we went about over the next 13 years, building a serviced office business across 4 continents in 17 countries. And one of those countries happened to be the USA. And in 2001, in New York City, we all know what happened. The terror of 9/11 didn't just destroy the Landmark business, it destroyed lives and destroyed dreams. So what do you do when dreams are destroyed? You sit down and you think. This was my first real experience of pain. So I said to myself, what do I do now? I thought, having worked throughout Europe, started a business in Europe, in Asia, and in America. And to be fair, it wasn't that much fun in Europe. I had a bloody nose in most places. Then this happened in America, and I thought, it's time to go back to Africa. So, many people advised that, look, Africa is a troubled continent. Are you sure it'll work? But at the time, I thought, the youth were growing, the generations were getting better, the political leadership was becoming more steady, the facilities and the services and the framework in Africa was a bit better. It's not what we hope it would be, but it was better than the 90s. So while people were discouraging me, I remember a quote, and it said, "The people who think it can't be done should stop interrupting the people who are actually doing it." So we came. So in 2004, we packed our bags. We sold off the European business. We sold off what was left of the American business, and we came straight on into Africa. Again, we started Africa with these 4 lovely ladies and myself. I wish they were here, because they're looking a lot younger today than they even were then, that many years ago. And then Rachel on the right-hand side, she's a veteran of starting 9 different offices across the Landmark history and growth. But after a few years in Nigeria, she went to Kenya, opened her office in Kenya, in South Africa, a couple of other places. And then I said, it's time for you to go back to London. So she refused to japa to London. So unfortunately, she left Landmark. Anyway, the story goes on. So in 2004, we set out to create our service office framework across Africa. But not only to do that, we wanted to build the biggest and the best mixed-use destination on planet Africa. So how do we do this? We needed to find a site. So 2 years later, we found that site in 2006. It was a derelict piece of land between the bustling business district of Victoria Island and the growing residential Lekki corridor. And I thought to myself, what is this? Saw it from above and thought, what is this land? Well, it hit all these characteristics. It was right by the soon-to-be West African Coastal Highway. It had a fantastic ocean, fantastic views. There were very few people around, and we thought, let's turn this into the biggest business, leisure, and lifestyle destination in West Africa. So, what did we do? Over the next 10 years, we did quite a lot of things. We built buildings across Africa. We developed Landmark. We developed Landmark to a certain stage. And in doing that, we had to borrow money. We had to beg for money. The only thing we didn't do was steal. So over that period, we had borrowed up to $18 million. Borrowed and gotten equity investments up to $80 million. This picture, I remember, was a video taken at CNBC. It was when the last $20 million was given to us in 2015. And that made it $100 million of invested other people's money. And then we went on to create what we have today. But before that, something just stopped in the world. The pandemic came in 2020. And this was an epidemic that basically said people should stay apart. Our entire business philosophy was about bringing people together. It was a disaster of immense proportions. For many reasons, from a business point of view, from a family and a social point of view, and from a disruption point of view. But you know, they say disruption is a necessary element to social change. So we had to put aside, because we were closed for 12 months during that period, so we had to put aside personal gain and sacrificed and created and worked with Lagos State and with YPO to create one of the Etiosa COVID Centre, and we housed it at Landmark. And at the same time, we did a vaccination centre. So I got into this whole dream, and I remember what Winston Churchill said: you make a living from what you get, but you make a life from what you give. So that taught me a few things. Even though we had economic pain, we had a lot of social gain. So that journey continued. So these are two pictures. One was 10 years ago, and the other, or 11 years ago, and the other was today. So 11 years ago, we had just built the event center. We spent, I think it was $4 million shoring up the sea line so the water didn't hurt us. We spent another $6.5 million reclaiming the sea. And on that, we then proceeded to build what effectively was the most visited business, leisure, and lifestyle destination in West Africa. I say that because we employed 4,000 people. We had 3.5 million visitors. We paid billions of naira in taxes. We incubated thousands of businesses. We changed so many lives. So from a commercial and a social standpoint, we thought we were winning. Or were we? So this is a story close to my heart, because I know I've missed the slide, because I was going to tell the Lion's Den story, but it's gone somewhere. But if we have time, I'll go back to it. So this is a story close to my heart. It was my brother's 60th birthday. His birthday is March the 4th. And we went on a cruise. It was my first ever cruise, and it was the Caribbean cruise. So we're sailing. I've always refused to go on cruises. My wife loves them. She's been on 5. This was my first one. But you're out at sea for 3 weeks, literally just watching the ocean. So we're on this cruise, and when your phone is off for a lot of the time because there's no signal. On our way back from Jamaica to Florida, my phone was off. When I arrived in Florida, my phone went berserk. And I thought, what's going on? Then someone sent me WhatsApp messages of this notice. So I got this WhatsApp notice, and I thought, oh gosh, shake down, shake down, shake down. Give me a break, right? Then I started making some phone calls, because I still had a few more legs of that trip to go. But nobody was answering my calls. So there was something wrong. Eventually, someone said, I think you better come home. So I came back home, and as they say, it was utter disbelief. Someone had decided the first kilometer of a 700-kilometer road was going to go through the biggest, what I thought was the best, but certainly the most visited leisure destination in West Africa. Well, what were my feelings? First of all, denial. Then, I think there are the 5 feelings of grief. Yes. Then there's anger. And then, after anger, there was the bargaining. I'm sure you saw some of the interviews and the conversations. And after the bargaining, there was sadness. And at the end of the sadness, you accept it. And you say to yourself, what am I going to do? Is this failure? And I remind you, remember what Michael Jordan said? Michael Jordan said, I have missed 9,000 shots. I have lost 300 games. 26 times I've had the match-winning opportunity with a shot and failed. I have failed, and failed again, and that's why I succeed. So I said to myself, it is what it is. They can take away what you have, but they can never take away who you are. That's right. I'm convinced someone's changing my slides. But anyway, during the aftermath of that, I mean, there was an outpour of empathy and sympathy, and we said to ourselves, we're going to change all this to some equity, right? Sympathy is great, empathy is great. I had calls from 4 different African presidents, from different state governors, from friends and family, from world leaders, from institutions. I mean, it was amazing. And I thought to myself, if I had to pay for this publicity, it would have cost a lot more than we've actually received in investment. So how are we going to, what do they say? Yes, how are we going to make lemonade out of a lemon? So, I think I'm going the wrong way, aren't I? Sorry, I'll figure this out one day. Anyway, I know it's my last slide. So my last slide is about, so what next? Is that? Yes. So my last slide is what next? Yes, so we're faced with this conundrum. You either lie down and go to sleep, or you stand up, you tell the story, or you get things done. And you know what they say, you need, even though the world is full of ordinary people, you need to find those few extraordinary people to make you a successful organization. So we've decided that not only are we going to continue in business, we're going to stay here and we're going to do it again. And we're going to grow it bigger, better, and stronger. I can't stand on platforms like this and talk about resilience and preach the other way. So I'm going to leave you with 2 things. There are 2 things, because I know there are a lot of young people here, and there are 2 things in my journey that I have always thought were great things. One is balance, yes, and the other is the world is fair, right? Well, I'm going to debunk those 2 things.
Oh, wow.
So the first one is, I call it the balance fallacy. So you grow up and people say, get some balance, 8 hours to sleep, 8 hours to socialize, and 8 hours to work. Well, you know what they say? If you want to buy things without looking at the price tag, then you've got to work without looking at the clock. So in terms of balance, I put it to you, aspire for greatness, but recognize the sacrifice. Yeah. I put it to you that if you prioritize balance over sacrifice, you're unlikely to be in the top 1%. Yeah. You must sacrifice. The second fallacy, we call it the fairness. I call it the just world fallacy. In the world, they say, good is rewarded and evil is punished. Sorry, it's not true. Good is never rewarded. Well, good is hardly rewarded, right? And evil is not always punished. So you roll the punches. You can't change the cards you're dealt. You can only change the hand you play. So the last thing I'll say is 3 things. As I grew up, I said 3 things to myself every single month, and I still do it to today. Find someone to look up to. Find something to change, and find somewhere to go. Thank you very much.